Hi, everybody. David Capes, your host with Exegetically Speaking. I'm really excited about our conversation today with Professor Takamitsu Muraoka. He is a man of heroic status and stature. He's 85 or so years old, lives in Holland, and I had a great conversation with him. It's a little bit long, according to our standards here for this podcast, but I think it's worth listening to, particularly his life story. Here is a man born in 1938 in Hiroshima, Japan, and he came to know the Lord there. And fortunately, he was not in Hiroshima in 1945, but he was in the countryside, as he'll tell you. But he went on to become a Christian. He went on to become one of the greatest professors of our day in Hebrew, Aramaic, Ugaritic. I don't know how many languages he knows. So anyway, stay tight. Listen to Professor Muraoka. I think you're going to really love him and love his spirit. We'll be back with more comments a bit later in the podcast.
Okay, my name is Muraoka Takamitsu, and I was born in Hiroshima, Japan in 1938. And during the war, I wasn't there, but lived in the countryside of Japan. And when I was at high school, my English teacher advised me to take part in an English Bible class which was held every Sunday in the city by an American Baptist missionary.
Wow.
And that was the first time I came in contact with the Bible. And eventually I decided to become a disciple of Jesus. And in my first year at the university, I was baptized there. So my university was in Tokyo, and there I majored in English. And at that university, there happened to be a world-famous professor in the Old Testament in another department of linguistics, and there he was teaching Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, and so on. So when I was majoring in English, I wanted to take a couple of courses with him as optional subjects. But when I went to see him, he said, "I'm not interested in teaching beginners." So he said, "You have to get the fundamentals of Greek and Hebrew somewhere else." So I taught myself the basics of the grammar and vocabulary of those languages, and then I went to study under him.
Now, you studied in Europe as well, didn't you?
I didn't study in Europe, but for my MA, I studied under him, and I wanted to go on to the PhD, but my professor said, "I can't guarantee to you that you can make a living as a researcher or teacher of Greek and Hebrew." I think he was testing how determined I was. But I put my foot down and studied under him. When I finished, I was in the second year of the PhD. I got an Israeli government scholarship. So I traveled to Jerusalem and studied there to study Hebrew. But the teacher I met there, the late Professor Chaim Rabin, persuaded me to undertake a doctoral research under his supervision. So I was persuaded by him, and eventually I did my PhD under him and writing a dissertation in 4 years. When I finished my doctorate, a British friend of mine, who was teaching at the University of Manchester in England, wrote to me that there was a opening in his department for modern Hebrew. So I applied for it and I got it. And I taught there 10 years, not only modern Hebrew, but also a bit of biblical Hebrew, Ethiopic, and so on. And after 10 years, I moved to the University of Melbourne in Australia as professor of Middle Eastern Studies. And there I taught Hebrew too, and Aramaic, Syriac, and so on. And there I taught 11 years, and then I heard of an opening in the University of Leiden, the oldest university in this country, going back to 1575, and I applied for the post, full professor in Hebrew and Ugaritic, and I was successful in it. So I moved with my family to Holland, and I taught here 12 years. So despite warning given my professor in Tokyo, I have managed to feed myself and my family 33 years.
Well done. Well done. That is great. That is a wonderful story.
Yeah.
And you tell, we're going to be talking today about your book, Why Read the Bible in the Original Languages. And you tell some of that story, at least, in this book. And I'm just amazed at some of the stories that you have about teaching, some of the students' questions and such. But let me ask this, because I want to talk about this book, Why Read the Bible in the Original Languages. You published this back in, I think, 2020, something like a few years ago.
Yes.
And it's published by Peters. It's a wonderful book. It's the kind of book that I want to give students to encourage them and advocate for the study of biblical languages in seminaries and in colleges and universities as well. I think it's so important. One of the stories you tell is a story about a Korean student who comes to you and asks, he said, "What do I tell my elders? When they think I'm learning Aramaic, aren't there more important subjects for me, like preaching and missions and culture and those kinds of things?" How do you respond then and today to that same question?
Well, one of the things I told my students in Taiwan at the time was that the Bible can be read not only as a theologically valuable, important book, but also authors of the biblical books were conscious of the importance of presenting their message in a literally, aesthetically beautiful form.
Mm-hmm. That's
right.
So
when you go to buy a piece of cake to a shop, of course it is important that it tastes nice, but it is also important to see how it is presented.
Absolutely.
And so on, right?
That's right.
So I told them about the acrostic poems, right?
Mm-hmm. And Lamentations and Psalms have acrostic poems in them.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And there's alliteration that happens
Yeah.
in places, and sort of rhyming schemes as well
Yeah.
in some places. But yeah, there's a beauty built into the text, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not only are they preserving truth, but they're also doing such in a beautiful form. Now, why did you have written many technical books in your years? In fact, I looked at our library, the Lanier Theological Library. We have, I think, 22 of your books in our library.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know how many more you've written, but you've written a lot. You've edited a lot as well.
Yeah.
But this is a book written for lay people, written for students.
That's right.
It's not a technical book. Why did you write this book?
Yes, because I consider the teaching and the research of the biblical languages my life's mission. And I wanted to share the fruits I have harvested with general audience. And I became Christian in Japan, so I have some sense of responsibility for the Japanese population. So this book was originally written in Japanese.
Oh, I didn't know
this
that.
is,
Wonderful.
English version of it. And the Japanese book, the first printing was sold out within a month.
Wow, that's
1
amazing.
month.
That's amazing.
The current one is a third printing.
Well, that's wonderful.
So I thought that the English people, English reading people might also like it. And thank you for your evaluation of the book. And you didn't say it, but it's reasonably inexpensive.
Well, that's true. That's
over
exactly
$20,
Is
right?
that okay? I'm not sure. I bought it, and I don't remember exactly how much it cost a while, but I know it wasn't expensive because I didn't.
No.
My wife did not cringe when I bought it, so that was
right.
good. So,
But as you pointed out, it is not written for specialists or experts in Hebrew and Greek, but for the general public interested in the Bible and beginning students at theological seminaries and divinity schools at the university. Therefore, although I discuss many examples from the biblical stories in the book, I never use the Hebrew or Greek alphabet in quoting words or sentences. They are transliterated in the English alphabet. And also, I avoid using technical jargon in linguistics and exegesis and so on. So I think this makes the book accessible to the general public.
it sure does. Mm-hmm.
But when I talk about various examples in the Bible, what I say is to a large extent based on my own research and thinking. So even experts may find here and there something original.
That's exactly right. And I did. I've been teaching Greek. I know you love Greek as well. You taught Hebrew for many years, but you also have the love for Greek. And I've taught Greek about 25 years. And I even learned some things as I was reading your book. And so I want to thank you. We're out of time for this segment, but we're gonna say thank you. And we're going to have another opportunity to talk with you about specifically about Luke chapter 7. But that'll come up in another podcast. Professor Muraoka, thank you for being with us today on Exegetically Speaking.
Thank you for introducing me.
If you learn too much today and your head is hurting, there is one sure cure. That is to share this podcast with a friend. If you've never visited Wheaton College, I hope you'll make plans to do so. We have a wonderful campus all year round. And if biblical languages are your fancy, check out the MA and the BA program at Wheaton College. You can go to wheaton.edu, look for modern and classical languages. Get started today. This is the day you want to do it, right? If you have questions or comments, if you just want to be in touch, please email us at exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. That's exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. Thanks to all those who make this podcast possible. You know who you are. Until next time, thanks for listening.